that I'm recording now. Good, got that covered because that's the important part. We have about double the number here who weren't able to make it or had to jump off that are looking forward to this. So we really appreciate you being here. And Stacy and I were planning to just give a really brief overview working with local media and then turn it over to Cynthia. So Stacy, if you wanted to start, it's all yours.
Absolutely. So I'll share my screen if everyone can see that. So as many of you know, I'm Stacy. I work with Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center. I do the development, communications, and marketing work for Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center. But before I went into the nonprofit world, I worked in television for 9 years. And I started working in television in college. I've worked all the roles within a newsroom, so a producer, reporter, anchor, and then I managed the newsroom for 3 years before I had kids, and just news didn't fit into that time frame. So when we talked about and discussed about talking about these topics, I said I would help because there's definitely some differences between how you work with the television media and how you work with the press. Television is a lot different because everything's visual and everything's told within a certain set of time. You don't necessarily have that full paper length to explain everything. So I've come up with some bullet points and I'll touch on them briefly. And if you have questions afterwards, feel free to email me or we can talk about it a little more. So within television, some people call it a news release. I call it a media pitch. So when you have something going on within your organization, the best thing to do is to come up with the media pitch on how you're going to sell it to the television station. So the media pitch has to be something that's attention grabbing. It can be a story such as, you know, Billy Joe raised $500 to buy cookies and he's handing it out to his neighbors. So a story about an individual, or it can be an idea. Something we did a story on a couple years ago, our crisis team had hit a record high for the number of people they were serving. So then the media came in and did a story around our crisis team and what they do and why the numbers were so high. So it just has to be attention grabbing. I always think when I'm writing something to the media, whether it's in a format and laying it out or just sending them a quick email, I always think to myself, why do I care? Because the individuals that are watching the story, they want to care about the story in order to watch. And reporters can only cover 2 to 3 stories a day. So they're going to cover the stories that the people care about the most. So just keep that in mind when you're writing them. Why do I care? You always can invite the media to your events, but same as always, when I share my event to the public, why is the public going to care about that event? If it's an open house, new location, honoring somebody who deserves recognition in the communities, those are all really good sellers. Something that's different with television is it needs to be a visual story. TV, everything is visual. Hardly ever do you see them throw up a graphic, which is basically what I'm showing you here, a piece of paper, bullet pointing stuff. They want to be visual. That's why television's there. So when you're writing your media pitch, you're thinking about the story. What can I show them to add to the story and make the story better? If you don't have any visuals, or the person who you needed a visual of doesn't want to be on television, and you feel like it's still a really great story, then at least try to send a photo or a quote, because then the television anchor or reporter can write up something to show on screen with that quote or with that photo to show something. With television, there's a time limit. All reporters and anchors have stories from 3 minutes to 2 minutes. Hardly ever does the story go over 2 minutes unless they're in a ratings period, and they're doing multiple stories. And what I mean by multiple stories is you probably heard of series on the media. They'll do a part 1 and a part 2, but those are very rare. Those are usually really complex stories that they cover. So keep in mind the time limit. It has to be told within that 30 seconds to 2 minutes. when you're working on selling that pitch, you want to make sure your sell is short. The assignment manager goes through all the emails of the day every morning, and he'll pull out the press releases or the media pitches that he feels are important. And trust me, there are hundreds of emails to go through. So make sure it's short, you're to the point, and you're selling it, and you're writing that what, who, where, when, so they know what's going on. It's always important to ask for an RSVP. You want to know if they're coming so you can prepare, and we'll talk about that further down. And if you can prepare, it's going to be a better story and they'll come back. So that's pretty simple. A hint, here's my trick. If you want to get more coverage on like an open house or a live event, try to aim it during a time when television is airing, so that 5 or 6 o'clock time frame. And when you throw out your media pitch, suggest like this would be a great live shot opportunity, because then it'll buy you more time on TV. They can be there active with you as it's going on, and then you'll get more coverage in the other shows as well, because they'll be able to film more, interview more people. So there's a trick. So you want to make sure you're sending out your press releases at least 1 week in advance. Yes, things come up last minute, and it's okay to pitch them last minute, but I will tell you, they plan ahead, the reporters' stories, and they may tell you they're coming to an event, and then breaking news happens and they won't show up. So it's kind of a, toss up. But I would suggest sending it at least 1 week in advance. If you're sending it further than 1 week in advance, make sure you're following up. So if you sent it 2-3 weeks ago, make sure you're following up then 1 week in advance, so they didn't overlook it or miss it, which goes up with the follow-up. And then once you have the media here, or they're coming, make sure you have everything set up for them to go. Interview you, they're gonna wanna interview someone, they're visual. They're going to either want to interview 1 or 2 people. So in television lingo, there's 2 different formats of stories. They can either do a smaller story, which they consider a VOSAT, or a larger story, which is a package. And in a package, they will need 2 interviews. So I always have 1 interview ready to go and have another one on standby. And when the reporter walks in, I ask them what type of story they're going to do, if it's longer or short. And when they say longer, I know that I need to have my second interviewee ready to go. Again, make sure you have your visuals and what they're going to film. So when they show up and they ask you, well, what am I able to film? You can bring them to the spaces or areas or show them. So you have that all set up. That's really beneficial if we have clients in the building here, so I need to make sure like that room isn't being used by a client, or I'm not near a client that might be uncomfortable, so it's important to plan ahead. And then for a lot of places, and I know this works for us, I'm sure it's for Heidi, Susie, maybe Amanda as well, we need permission from all of our consumers that are on camera. It's really important to get permission from anyone if you're going to be filming them within the workspace. There are people that feel uncomfortable with it. You'd hate to have them come after you for filming them and they didn't want it. We're obviously HIPAA compliant here. It is a no-no to be filming our clients unless they want that to happen. At Hiawatha, we actually have a form that they fill out and sign, and then I file it away in their folder. So we know that we have that permission on file. It's however you want to work it, however your rules go, but it's just really important to make sure you do that. And then the last tip is to build those relationships. Once you have that one reporter that's hooked on your mission and your organization, they will keep coming back. They will keep doing stories. What I like to do is if a reporter comes and covers, for instance, we just had a reporter cover our Caledonia building and the opening of our Caledonia building. And while he was there, I also was pitching other stories. Like, did you know in Caledonia that we also are doing telemed services for individuals that are in the jail there, that we do assessments for recovery, and he already wants to come back and do it. So it's so important to make that connection. And in order to make those connections, you need to just have the rest in line. You need to, when they show up, have things ready to go. If you're unorganized and they're on a time limit because they have to get their stuff in the 5, 6, and 10, they're probably not going to come back to your organization again because it was just so much work to meet their deadlines. So that's television media in a nutshell. That was a lot. I will pass it over to Brian unless somebody has a question they want to ask quick.
I have a quick, oh, sorry, Nancy, you do too.
No, go ahead. You go
I
first.
just have a quick question about, is it insulting to prepare questions for a reporter so that they can get to the meat of the story since they're not unfamiliar?
I have never done that. Most reporters will sit down. So during their morning meeting, they will sit down with their news director and assignment manager and prepare questions ahead of time. It's what happens in most television stations. What I have done is, even though a reporter may ask a question like, tell me about your program, and it's so generic, I have worked with our interviewees, so our managers here or our employees here that get interviewed, and I coach them on what to say. So I always say, well, they'll probably ask you what you do, you know, tell me about this program. And so I throw in what needs to be said, the meat of the story. And then if the reporter hasn't dug deep into what we want them to do by then, in the end, I always say, can we just add a little bit more? I want Sally to really talk about this program. And then usually the reporter will say, okay, and build off of that. But I let the reporter do the work. I coach and work with the interviewees before they even go on what the focus of the story should be, because even though they're asking you questions, you shape what you want to say. So they could ask you a direct question, you can go around that very easily. Once they're in the building, you control the interview. I know that sounds mean, Aaron, but it's the truth.
No, it's perfect. Thank you.
So my question is, there's, a limited number of TV stations. Are you better off just pitching to one, or do you do it to all of them in hopes that one will actually show up? And then what happens if more than one does?
That's a really good question. I pitch to all. So I usually hit up WXOW, WKBT, WEAU, and then I tie in KTDC and HBC into those. I'd rather have more than one television show up. I think the more coverage, the better. WXOW has different viewers than WKBT, and so does WEAU. WEAU covers part of this area and then more in Eau Claire. And then a side note, WXOW is actually in partnership with KTDC, and every afternoon those TV stations meet and they share what they've been covering of the day, and KTDC can take the story from WXOW, just like WKBT's partners. So I invite them all. They all have different viewerships. The more, the better. What you can do, Nancy, since your shop is a lot smaller, if you're worrying about like being overwhelmed, when they call an RSVP, just say to them, could you come around 1 and then the other one around 1:30 so you have time to space them out? It's however you want to work it. Or if it's a live event, usually the reporters will team up and interview you at the same time, or maybe you interview with one and somebody else interviews with the other. But I think the more the merrier, because they just cover different areas. Yeah. Yes, Nancy.
So, sorry, I'm thinking about an event, not that's ours, but when you use a anchor or a reporter for an MC for an event from one channel, does that pretty much totally turn off the other channels from covering the event, even if they don't have to cover that part of it?
Yes. Yes, it does. So in the last place I worked at, we were specifically, so this was Rochester area, we specifically had somebody within KAAL anchor, which turned off, or not anchor, MC, an anchor MC'd, which completely turned off KTDC from anything they wanted to do with us, which is silly, but that's how they work. They're competitive. So yes, and there's not much you can do to get around that. What I would say is, so through my research and experience, I knew that even though KDDC was rated the top station in that area, that KAAL covers more local news and they get more local viewers within Rochester, which obviously for development, you want to aim local for people giving. So that's why we went the KAAL angle and decided to do that. But yeah, it's just how they work. If you have one MC the show, the other isn't going to show up. So try to get as most bang for your buck if you have that happen. Ask them to sponsor, ask them to MC, ask, yeah, whatever you can get out of that TV to get the most bang for your buck. Okay, Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Stacy. And I want to give a lot of space to Cynthia. So I will just, I put together a similar tip sheet. I'll just put it into the chat. Everything Stacy said, if you could see my screen, I was just nodding very aggressively. And I think Cynthia would agree with a lot of this too. It's really great advice. The only thing I would add right now from the print media perspective that I know I get asked a lot about is there's part of the reason that I'm sitting here and a lot of other journalism expats are in different places is that it's a really struggling industry. There's not nearly the numbers that there used to be. And so that means they will run a lot of your stuff word for word. So keep that in mind. And if it's local, all the better. Local places are looking for really good local content and they don't have a lot of people to produce it. So writing press releases, writing your own stories about events, writing really cool write-ups about somebody who did something great for your organization. The more the merrier, write it up, send a photo, send it. You will be amazed, I think, at how much they will publish because they're looking for really good local content. So that's what I would suggest. And then on top of everything Stacy really said. And I think with that, I want to give Cynthia a lot of time and space here. Cynthia, I'm going to make you a co-host and that should work for you. It might even take it away from me. And just briefly for those who know who Cynthia, so Cynthia was an award-winning reporter and editor for a long time with the Post and now is the social media guru and marketing expert at Visit Winona, continuing to win lots of really amazing awards there and do really cool work. I think I've really liked watching the Where Am I Going Next in Winona videos and not only the participation you get, but then the courage you take to go where people tell you to go.
Right.
And it's been such a cool way of building such a unique and tons of voice and tons of kind of heart, a brand for Winona.
Right.
And so that level of engagement you get, I think, both from folks in Winona and broadly is really fantastic. So I'm just going to turn it over to Cynthia to talk, kind of give her the general topic of how to tell really engaging stories through social media. And I know she's got some good content and then is open for a lot of questions too. So Cynthia, we really appreciate you being here, both for the folks on the screen today and then recording this for a couple dozen folks who have asked for this but weren't able to be here today. So.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me. I think I know most of you, maybe not every single one of you, but so I do have a presentation that's going to talk about the different platforms. It's going to talk also if you decide you want to throw a little money at marketing, because, telling a story in social media, no matter what kind of organization you are, what you're really doing is marketing. So let's see, I'll just share my screen. Give me a second here. Yeah. And we will go through this. Okay. So social media marketing is, it's a bit of a confusing field. There are so many different platforms. So people feel a lot of pressure sometimes, even in really small organizations, to try to be everywhere because they hear, oh, so-and-so is on Twitter or Pinterest or Snapchat or Instagram. But if you look at these numbers, you will see that Facebook still is really the top of the pile. And I'm going to show you why. So so people of all demographics are on Facebook. You're gonna, no matter who you're all serving, whether you're serving educated, affluent adults, they're on Facebook. If you're serving young people, they're still on Facebook. You know, if your audience is very young, like an 18 to 24-year-old audience, you may do better with an Instagram or Snapchat account, because they're more concentrated in those places, but they still are very prevalent in Facebook. The other thing is that with the other platforms, Pinterest, Instagram, in particular, Pinterest, Instagram, and Snapchat, is that you would need to have content that's very, very, very visual. And I know for, you know, a lot of organizations, that's a challenge. So, so as far as just storytelling goes, really Facebook is still king. Okay, so here's some more statistics. I'm not going to read through all of these, but basically, this is good news and bad news for you. So every 20 minutes, 1 million links are shared. And the reason that these numbers are important is because you have a lot of competition out there. And so your content has to be consumable and digestible and interesting. Back to those demographics. And also, I'm happy to share this deck with anybody who would just like to have the deck and doesn't want to see the whole recording. But here's some really interesting demographics as far as US adults, where they're spending their time, what their income levels are, what their education levels are. As you're fundraising, you know, this can be a great guide for you. And, you know, YouTube, like Shakespeare, probably has a much greater opportunity to be present on YouTube than most of us would. But Facebook has, you know, a pretty good visual platform too for videos. So that's why we went with the Facebook Live. It is very, very human. And what we found out just through some trial and error is that people want to connect with people, even if it's a brand. They want to know that there are human beings behind it. And so it's so important, if you're trying to promote your organization, whether you're trying to build clients or build financial support, you have to remember that if you're bringing it into a social media space, social media by default is there for people to go to and be social. And so if you're going in and trying to sell, and you sound like you're selling, and you sound markety, and you're using, you know, kind of pitch words, people will immediately tune you out. You will have such a difficult time finding a following there, because people do not want to be sold to in social media. So being conversational and being human is absolutely necessary to build a following. You can do different things on a Facebook page, and we'll talk about Facebook groups in a minute, but on a Facebook page, you can do a lot of different things to try to be relevant. Sharing interesting articles is a very good way, things that are topical for the type of industry that you're in. You can ask people questions or put up polls once in a while, but you know, I'm sure you've all seen there are some pages that come across like they're just begging you to please comment, or tag your friend, and nobody really is going to do that. I mean, they might, one or two people, but that's just not, that comes across as selling, and people are just not going to do it. They're going to be turned off by it. Also use emojis. I know, you know, some of us adults feel dumb using little winky emojis or whatever, but there's some research that shows people of all demographics sincerely respond to these emojis. And so a post with emojis is more likely to be interacted with than a post that doesn't have them. Let's see. So without spending money, there are some ways to really expand your reach. And that basically comes down to everyone in your organization has personal friends and family. And, you know, depending on where they're located, you should leverage them and just frankly ask them, will you please share these posts for us? We need to expand our platform. We need to expand our visibility. And if you're not throwing money at it, then this is really the #1 way to do it. Facebook is a cruel platform. It has an algorithm that marketers spend half of their day trying to figure out. So it show certain posts to more people, other posts to fewer people. Some of it has to do with how well your last post was received. Some of it has to do with whether you're a brand or an individual. So Facebook will show, if it comes from an individual share, Facebook will show that to far more people than if it comes from a brand. In general, you can expect that even if you have a massive following, so Visit Winona, it's not a massive following, it's about 16,000 followers on Facebook. And we know that on an average day, Facebook might show our post to about 10% of that if we're really lucky. And then, you know, all we can do is pray for some viral reach with it, that people engage with it, because when they engage with it, then it appears to their friends, and then we, you know, get some bounce out of it. So how do you get some bounce out of a post? Really, photos. Photos are what people love, no matter what platform you're on, even Twitter, but especially on Facebook. If you're just posting words, you can expect that very few people are going to pause long enough to read what you're saying. But if you are posting photos, people are much more likely to be engaged. Also, if you are posting links, you should know that Facebook is going to punish you for that if those links lead off of Facebook. For example, if you're posting, I'm not keeping up with my own notes. If you're posting on YouTube, for example, and so you want to lead people to a link on YouTube, Facebook is going to punish you in that algorithm and show your post to fewer people. So we'll talk about video in a minute too, but really sharing within the platform is the best way to get the broadest visibility. But just know that people are far more likely to see your content if it's being shared by a human being. So what if you don't have photos though, right? It's, you know, there are lots of organizations that have, you know, confidentiality issues, and you know, they're not sharing Big Brothers Big Sisters or Hiawatha Valley. I mean, you're not sharing photos except for in really, you know, particular circumstances of your clients. But you need to have something visual. Pexels and Pixabay are two stock photo agencies that are completely free. And actually, so Pexels, I'll use Pexels for marketing sometimes. I do marketing for a few different clients, and you know, one of them is a construction industry client, and I don't have any construction industry photos in my portfolio of photos. So you can find just about anything there, and they're actually very good quality photos. And why they are offered for free, I've never really quite figured out. I think that these are photographers who are maybe, you know, semi-pro or amateur trying to build a name for themselves. I don't know, but there are some really great photos there. And so, sorry, my bird now hears me talking, and so he's going to chime in. So video. The Facebook Live series has done as well as it's done because people liked connecting with human beings. That's really, you know, and also they liked being in control of, like, they would send, you know, make me climb Sugarloaf and go ice skating, and, you know, just almost like sense of humor kinds of things, because, you know, they knew I was dreading it. But more than that, really, it was just that we added a face, me and sometimes my assistant. And so I just have to say, it's not so much me, I think, as the personalization of Visit Winona's brand. I cannot overstate how important that is now. And it didn't used to be, you know, those of us who are like 80s children, when the internet started to come around, everyone loved the anonymity of it. And that was really how it survived for a decade until the later 2000s, and people started to not trust anonymity anymore. And now people would like to interact with human beings. So when you are considering video, I know that everyone is not comfortable in front of video, but it's not as bad as it sounds. I swear to God, I did not want to do the Facebook Live. I tried to make my assistant do it the first day, and she said, I can't, I'm an introvert. And I just said, you know, shoot. And so I did it, and I thought we would never do another one. And, you know, it ended up, it was not as hard as it looked. But really, if you're talking about video, it doesn't have to be something that's dramatic. It could be just humanizing your office. Hey, meet Sheila. She's our office manager. You know, it was her birthday last week, and she's got a Pomeranian she brings to work once in a while. I mean, you just are creating a presence as people, and then people are just much more likely to want to interact with you. As I said before, try to upload your videos directly to Facebook instead of putting them on YouTube and then linking to it from Facebook. You'll do better. You will do much better if you just straight upload it to Facebook. What Visit Winona does is both, actually. So we record and upload all of our Facebook Lives later onto YouTube, but then we stream them live on Facebook. Let's see. You can share video content too. Video content is one of the most engaged with things on the Facebook platform. However, there's some things that people hate. This note about captioning the video, I don't know how many of you are working in some kind of, you know, like movie editor where you can do this, but here's why it's important. People hate it when the sound automatically starts when a video pops into their screen. So you can increase your viewership quite a lot if you're able to caption it. If you don't know how to caption it, you know, my advice is a couple of different things. Actually, one is that I would tap into a college kid, because especially someone who's studying in a multimedia sort of an avenue, they're going to know how to do that. Also, if you just can't find a human being in town or that you know who can do it, because it's, you know, it's not difficult to do. You just need to have a software platform that you can edit the frames of your video in. There's a group that's called Fiverr, FIVRR.com. And Fiverr is a strange collection of professionals of every sort of variety, and I mean every variety, that will do gig work for as little as $10, you know, or they will do a project for you. They call it Fiverr because a lot of them have just like a little sample of their work for $5. And so they'll do a little project for you for $5. It's all run through the platform. And so there's some safety measures in place. I had a woman from Nigeria build an entire website for me for like $300, you know? And so you can, they're not all foreign people. There are people all over the world though that are in this platform, but there are a lot of people from the United States, a lot of people who have really special skills that you just need once, you know, or you need once a month or something like that. And I found that was a really good way to find some expertise without having to pay a lot of money for it, and get it done in an efficient way. Let's see. Yeah, live is really popular, you guys. I mean, going live is probably your best choice if you're going to do video, because then you can go live and then you can save it, and then have it in your video content as well. So Facebook groups or Facebook pages, it's a bit confusing trying to sort out between them, but they really are incredibly different. They have different purposes. A Facebook page, you can think of it as like your billboard, more or less. It is to raise awareness about your brand, to gather followers, and let you share news and information about your platform. When people follow you, if they interact with something, it will show up to their friends. So you can get some viral engagement out of the things that you're posting. However, people have a really limited ability to interact with you. They can't post onto your wall in most cases. And so they can only comment, and then you comment back. And it's not, you know, it's like kind of at the very top of the sales funnel, right? These people are strangers. A Facebook group, on the other hand, you can let anyone post to it. You have a lot of control, right? So I'll talk more about that in one second. But you are able then to attract some of your more loyal people and then deepen your relationship with them by having an exchange that is ongoing that they can participate in. And the one thing that you lose in that is that when they interact in a group, that will not show up in their feed, so their friends won't see it. However, every time there's a post in a group, the default is that it will show up as a notification when that person logs into Facebook. For example, I joined a Minnesota gardeners group, and I keep forgetting to shut it off, but I'm getting like 14 or 15 notifications every time I log into Facebook because it's a really, really active group. And so that you can get like a much more consistent interaction with some of the people who are your more core followers. And you can, with those people using that platform and deepening your relationship, you do have the possibility then to mobilize them in other ways, ask for their help, ask them to bring a friend. You have a lot more latitude with those people than you do on your regular Facebook wall. On your regular Facebook wall, you can drive people away quickly by asking for favors, asking them to share things or whatever. But people who are loyal to you, they love to be asked their opinion, and they would probably love to help also. So if you said, guys, we're thinking about ways to increase our ticket sales by 20% this year for this event, but we'd really like to hear from you what you think is the best way to do that. You could put that on your Facebook page and you might get some engagement. You could put that on your Facebook group and really, engage with the people who care about your brand. Anyone can post in a group once they're accepted to it, but you have a lot of control over who's accepted. You can have it just open, anybody. You can have it where you gatekeep. They have to answer a question or they have to be approved by you. You can kick them out if they're naughty. You can set rules and post them, but actually anybody can post something in this group. Okay, paid advertising. How are we doing on time? Paid advertising, even if you don't have any money, is really a good idea with Facebook because you can do a program for almost nothing on Facebook. So you would look down that side to the promote button. That's where you would go to start doing most of your advertising. So boosting is the lowest hanging fruit in Facebook advertising. And I'm sure if you've posted on Facebook, you see the little question, box underneath, boost the post. So what happens if you boost that is that you can push out just exactly whatever the post was, you can push that out, and you have a choice of who you send it to, and you can actually get pretty specific with this. You can send it only to your followers. For example, sometimes Visit Winona, we're trying to push up our algorithm. Maybe it's been low, so we're trying to push up our algorithm. So we'll take something like this post, which is really popular, and then we'll boost it only to our followers. And so what we're trying to do is increase our engagement so that then Facebook says, oh, they're posting really good content. And so then it'll show our next post to more people organically. Sometimes we are posting to strangers where we're just trying to raise awareness and try to build followers. There's a couple differences between boosting posts and placing ads. One of them is that in the top content part, you can have as much wording there as you want when you're boosting a post. And an ad, you have 90 characters. You have to really have a very limited amount of text in the top. But you can specifically say what age group, men or women, where do they live. You can also say what do they like, what are their demographics. You get to all of these, through that promote brand. You can get to the field or by clicking on the boost post. And so you see down at the bottom, it says, your potential reaches X number of people. Don't be fooled by that. I've never, ever seen it actually, never. I've never seen it go to that many people, but but you have an ability to target really, really, really specifically. So for example, sometimes we will target for like people who have anywhere in their interests, Winona State University or St. Mary's University or other things, you know, Shakespeare Festival, classical music, if we're trying to push Beethoven, you know, whatever. You can be so specific. Also, you can, you know, they try to push you to do 7 days or 14 days, but really on that little calendar link, 2/3 of the way down, you can set it for as many days as you want. And you can set an amount in the total budget for as little as like $5 a day if you wanted to. And I strongly suggest that you just try it, that you sample with that. You can set an end date, you know, so that it doesn't, you know, drain your account after you forget about it and it goes for a year. But if you set it even for just like $5 a day and set it for 2 weeks, you know, so your spend is quite low. But what it does is just kind of keeps pushing you out there, pushing you out there, pushing you out there. That estimated reach. I mean, so look at this one. We were spending $8 a day and it ran for 10 days and our estimated reach was 1,400 to 5,300 people. That'll change day to day. It has to do with how many people log in, how many people are scrolling and so forth. But it's a very low cost way to get into pushing your page out to strangers. A traditional ad, if you need to drive traffic to your website, this is a one place where Facebook doesn't hurt you so much if you have a link to outside. They know that what you're trying to do is build your brand. And so a traditional ad can also be created through that promote button. And I would also use this if you wanted to also appear like in Instagram. You wanted to appear in the sidebar or in the middle of the, you know, content. Facebook will take, if you allow it to, Facebook will take that post and it will put it wherever it can, wherever it fits. And I have found that it usually does a better job than I would of finding spaces and places for posts that we're doing. So a couple things though about placing ads. Facebook hates text on anything. I think that this got rejected actually. And you know, you can post it and you think it posted and then you go back later that day and it's gone through some sort of, you know, cruncher and it kicks it back to you and says, no, this isn't of visual interest to our platform because it has too many words on it. So really a good rule of thumb is less than 25% of the image should have wording on it. That typically gets through. You can request a manual review, but I don't know that this would have even still gone through. Let's see. Here's a cool thing about doing an ad. You can put in a video in an ad, and I think that that's a great idea. If you have just little clips, you know, that you've gotten some help to create, and they're nice quality, I would definitely use those in this, in an actual Facebook ad. Also a slideshow. People will, if the first image is interesting, they will click through more images. So if you do have images that are reflective of your brand or would engage people, a slideshow is really cool. But again, that 90 characters of text. So you see Winona's amazing place to visit. Like that's, we just, you know, and actually we developed that more than that, but it just goes to show, you know, from the boost where it was probably 400 characters of the story that we were telling, an ad, it really has to be short. Okay. You get to select what kind of button you put on it, you learn more, whatever, and tell it where it's going to lead. And again, this, I would definitely, if you've got a website that you're trying to drive content to, that is a good place to boost it. So automated ads are what I was saying, where I let Facebook decide where the ad shows up. And I think that it is a really good tool for getting your ad into a lot of different places that you might not actually be considering. Like for example, on Instagram, Facebook will look at algorithms. It will look at engagement in one spot and then try in another spot. It's just smarter than we are. And there again, so just showing you $5 daily budget. And this was a really small number of likes for $5. But if you're really just trying to gather some followers from a really specific group, maybe that's not so bad. Maybe that gathering up one follower is worth more to you than $5. And so it's worth it to do that. You can go into a space called Insights. If you look up at the top of your Facebook page, it says More. And then if you click on More, it says Insights. And Insights will show you these numbers. But there's a lot more that you can see in there. You can look at how many people clicked on it, how many comments, how many shares, what the overall engagement was, how many people were reached. And reach is a nebulous term. It's like how many people saw it in theory. There are some other things in there. Whatever I just said just woke Siri up. She started recording what I was saying. That was weird. So there's other things, like you can see what time your followers are online if you go into Insights. And so you can aim posts really specifically for those times. You can see what the age groups are of the different people. You can see where they're located, the people who are engaging with you. There's a lot of information inside Insights that can help you kind of fine tune your timing and your content to see who's responding to it when. So I am happy to answer whatever questions I'm able to.
I have a question, Cynthia, about how often to post on social media before you start to wear out your audience base.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Because we know that Facebook posts to so few of our followers, you have a pretty wide latitude to post. I'll tell you, marketers really disagree about that. Some say like 3 times a day. I completely disagree. I think for Visit Winona during non-COVID time, we would post like once a day something. And at this point, we're just posting like every other day. So I think something in between 3 and 5 times a week is a good number. I'll tell you this, when I first joined Visit Winona's marketing effort, I did a lot of research on what we were going to do. And they had been posting every day, just something, just, sharing a post or, I don't know. It had very low engagement because none of it was particularly great content. So it had pretty low engagement, but they were posting every day and didn't understand why it wasn't working. So when I took over, I changed that and we posted 3 to 5 times a week. Usually it was like 3 to 4 times a week at the very most, but just picked, a really great photo, a really cool story, or whatever. And the engagement went up like 1,000% over a 12-month period to their page. And so even though we were posting far fewer posts, the content was better. So really it's about the content, as much good content as you have. Beware of posting, bad content people are not going to engage with, because then Facebook suppresses your feed lower and lower and lower and shows it to fewer people, because it assumes if you don't get engagement, then Facebook assumes that you're not posting good content. So you just have to find some kind of like a delicate balance in there, between what people are going to engage with and what you need to tell them. Yeah.
In a community the size of Winona, what would we think or expect a high level of engagement to look like? Do we have a sense for how many people would follow or like our page and things like that?
No, and I'll tell you why. It just has a lot to do with what your product is. Visit Winona it's a tourism product, so it evokes kind of this heart sense from people. People feel strongly about the community. We have a lot of followers. Most of our followers actually are not from Winona. And so we are going to have more followers than like Doll Automotive, although I will say this, my daughter, I use Doll as an example because my daughter is a salesperson there. And so she made a Facebook page for herself, Cynthya Porter's auto sales at Doll Automotive, whatever, something like that. And she actually has, I have a photography page that I don't really push out there. It's just there. She has more followers in 6 months than I've had in 5 years. And it's just because she shared it to her group and then her friends shared it. And so it's really about getting people to engage and then share and then exposing other people to the content. I mean, it really, Merrimack Canoes, for example, and Sanborn, they have like 35,000 followers. I mean, it's an insane number of followers for such tiny, tiny companies, but they do a really good job pushing their content out and sharing it with people who are passionate about it. So finding the people who are passionate about whatever it is that you're doing is the key, really.
Cynthia, what would be some steps that people could take to begin to build the base? Like, say there has been a Facebook page that really has been dormant, and so it's starting kind of at the ground level. How would you recommend beginning to turn that into something that's dynamic and active?
Does it have followers?
Very minimal.
Okay. I think that if there's any way to put money into a marketing program, doing that like $5 a day thing and keeping it pushing out there is a really good way to start getting visibility. But also assuming that the organization has multiple people associated with it, I would very directly ask or expect, a board of directors or employees or anyone that they be asked to share it from their personal page. The other thing, the kind of the approach that we started with Visit Winona, because Visit Winona had, quite a few followers, like several thousand followers when I started with them, but their engagement was nothing. They would post something and they would get 3 likes on it. It was very, very low engagement. And which is a vicious circle, because then Facebook shows it to fewer people, then they get lower engagement, and pretty soon you're just on the bottom and it's a dead page. So one of the things that we did was really change the tone on the page. And I think, depending on your product, you really, have to decide for yourself what kind of tone you can speak to people in. But what we found was that something that sounded very personal was much more appealing to people. So we just said, hey, you guys, using a tone exactly like that. Hey, you guys, can you help us out? Here's our mission. We just really want to tell a lot of people about Winona. So that little core group that you've got that is following you, you engage them with just kind of a plea for help. You say, here's what we're trying to do. We are going to get to 100 followers by the end of next month. Can you help us? And then people become engaged. If they're already following you and it's a small group, they would be more likely to engage and help you. And that's how I would start trying to build a following. But again, it really, there's a mixture of like begging people to do things that will drive them away, or asking for their help, engaging them like they're really important to you, So if you're trying to sell something to them, like, hey, please donate to our cause, you probably are going to have a problem with that. But if you engage them like, hey, we think that you guys probably know people who would care about this, can you help us spread the word? I think that you could do better. Also, contests are great. People love contests. Facebook makes it fairly easy to do contests. And if you have something that you can give away, absolutely, like that is a great way to get people engaging, because it doesn't even matter what it is, but people love free stuff. They love it. They love it. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, this cat is scratching me. Anybody else? Where did Brian go?
Ryan has to be at a meeting at the city, so I'm your new host.
Okay, hi. Well, so I don't have anything else, but I will share this slide deck with Brian, and he can send it out to anybody he wants to. I don't care. Use it as you wish. Oh, I see a chat box. You know what? I'm a terrible presenter. I didn't read any of these. Let's see. Blah blah blah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yes, you can have the slide deck. Whoever posted that. And also, I think, you know, Brian knows how to reach me, but I'll tell you too, it's just Cynthia Porter at Gmail. And if you have questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. I don't know everything. You know, I am an Instagrammer also. If that's your platform, I'm happy to try to give you more information about that. But and Twitter to some extent and Pinterest to some extent, but I'm happy to answer questions if I can for you. So.
Thank you. I know there are a lot of people in the group who are eager to watch this, but just struggled to take part today. So we'll be sharing all of your helpful guidance with the larger membership. I think our list is about 120 nonprofit professionals who will be grateful to have your feedback.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Help now.
All right.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you. Cynthia. All right, everybody, that pretty much wraps up our meeting today. Are there any final parting thoughts you'd like to share before we say goodbye? Well, thank you for spending time.
It was a good meeting. Thank you. Yes,
Oh.
and Cynthia, I learned a lot.
Yes, thanks so much.
All right. Everybody have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.